is the first of two sessions on observing and studying learning ecosystem. The first presentation is by Carlo Giovannella. You see the title in the background. So Carlo, please go ahead.
Here we are back 1 year after the COVID outbreak, and to summarize what's happened during this year, and also what's happened to how the opinion of the students evolved. And this will be done through a case study that has been conducted at the University of Rome Tor Vergata. So what actually happened during this year? So you see, this is the pandemic timeline. That's what's happened in Italy. You see, this is the curve of the COVID cases, the recovered people, the difference, and the dead people. And you see that this what's happened in April 2020, and you see that the curve was much lower than what's happened recently. Also because we had not enough good tests to detect the people affected by COVID. But you see that after the first wave in September, with the starting of the school, the waves start to increase again, and we had the second wave, then the third wave around Christmas and the Easter holidays. And here we finally go to the vaccine. So what's happening in this period to the school? Well, you see that in 2020, we had for 2 months a fully lockdown. When we started again in September, actually, we faced with different strategies. For example, elementary and middle school were fully open, because we discovered at that time that the school are the most important social dampers. Doesn't matter what you teach and what you learn, but actually school are social dampers. And so basically they remain open because the parents has to go to work. Aside, you had some cases in the school or in the classes. And so there was a continuous stop and go due to the pandemic force. At high school, the situation was quite different because they organized the group shift, a sort of rotation of groups. And basically, due to the group shift, you had also what we call a blend. We can call parallel blended learning. I mean, the people that attend the lecture in classes, and other that participate to the activities from home. And now, with the exam, everything is open again. At university, they also started with the same strategy of the high school strategies, but it was much more complex because, of course, the number of students at the university is much higher. And so it was very complicated to organize a group shift or parallel blended learning. So most of the university closed the activities and switched again to online activities. Till now, I mean, all the examination now will be more or less carried on in presence. This is the corresponding situation over the world. So this was 1 year ago, actually, not today. It was more than 1 year ago, and this is what is now. So you see that most of the school are open or partially open. Only in some countries they are closed. Nevertheless, I mean, we are, I guess, all convinced that this was a starting of innovation process in some sense. Maybe not a standard one, like we'll see in a moment. So if we consider an innovation process, and we represent here which are the phases of a standard technological innovation process that has been very well, let's say, summarized in a recent paper by Yannick Aleostin published on IDEA Journal. you see that we have an awareness phase in which the people just get in touch with the potentiality of the technologies, and technologies are introduced upon an agreement. Then we have a phase of about 6 to 12 months in which you undergo the adaptation acceptance phase. And finally, after more or less 12 months, you should proceed on with the adoption. So this is a standard process. According to this, we should be more or less in between the acceptance and adoption phases. Actually, so indeed we had this 2 check-in point. I mean, it was 1 year just after the pandemic, and we did this survey with 100 students more or less. And the second check-in point after more or less 1 year has been done with 160 students. That has more or less the same characteristics. You have all the detail in the paper. Actually, the innovation process was not standard at all, because this pandemic-induced innovation process was quite different, because we undergone a forced adoption of technologies in the first months, some weeks, from few days to, let's say, some weeks. Then all people start to discover, progressively get about which are the potentiality of the technologies, experimenting them. And so this can be considered a sort of adaptation phase. And now, actually, we have counteracting forces that try to get back to the normality, let's say, and so to try to avoid to use as much as possible the technologies. So it's very difficult to say if all the standard factors that are used to let's say, study and investigate the standard innovation process can be applied in this case. So you know that usually you have several different kind of factors: individual, organizational, technological, related to the educational context, to the perceived value, to educational process, to which you have also to add a social factor and competences factor that you can put them into a funnel. Then you can derive several different models that has been used in the past to characterize the innovation process, like the TAM, the DOI, and TOI, and without. And from all this, we put all these elements, all these factors, we integrate all these factors and put them in the funnel. And at the end, you will see we derived what we call the MAITI model. Here you have a list of all the factors that we have considered. Of course, I will not go through because you have all the detail in the paper, but nevertheless, they are related to the different category of factors that I've illustrated you before. So having this in mind, we have prepared very carefully the second survey, and the question that we would like to answer are: how evolved the student perception during this year? In this year that we can consider the awareness adaptation time. Which factors are truly relevant in such peculiar innovation process that can be completely different from the standard one? And then which are the causal relationship between those factors and how they can be mapped or can lead to this MAITI model. So these are the outcomes. Very shortly, we'll show you some outcomes. This is the timeline that I already showed you before. And what's happened? For example, we detected a decrease in the perception of the student about the technological adequacy and of the university. also about the connectivity and the ability to integrate face-to-face and online activities. And this, in my opinion, can be ascribed to the attempt to use the blended parallel blended learning that was not very successful at all. And this can be very well understood also because the students considered their own technological adequacy and their own connectivity much higher than those offered by the university. So this was not at all the case in the first survey, 1 month after the lockdown in 2020. And so this also induces a perception about the propensity to innovate of the university that is lower to the individual propensity to innovate. And also make decrease, you see, the immaturity of the university. So basically, the immaturity of the university that is a complex construct that include technological adequacy, competencies, vision, process, etc. Increased just after the lockdown and decreased quite a lot right now. So you see that basically people start to be very autonomous with their own setting, but now that they are habituated with their own setting, they think that the university setting is much less, let's say, adequate to to what they can obtain, achieve with their own setting. So this is a very interesting outcomes in some sense. Then, of course, we confirmed that most of the learning activities were very transmissive, based on very transmissive learning process. Indeed, there have been a very large use of synchronous lectures and a very high use of online repositories, while quizzes and forum has been much less used, and even less has been activated collaborative activities and design activities. So this is it's confirmation of what we observed already in 2020. The consequence of all this is that basically the students perceive the level of self-regulation very high, and they perceive an improvement of their feeling toward technologies and also of their personal technological skills. This, in some sense, generate a positive feeling toward technologies. And indeed, the usefulness of technologies was perceived quite high, as well the usefulness of integrated didactic by itself. And so also, this is not hugely high, but is sufficient, more than sufficient. They think that they will use again online learning for personal training, and also that the university should rely anyway on online learning, and at least at 50% of the activity. So let's say that they are very pragmatic in some sense. They think that in any case there are some advantages that derive from online learning, and that this should be exploited also in the future. So there are some other consequences, some other outcomes that can be derived by, let's say, a canonical analysis of the data, but these are reported in the paper. I just go through two additional slides. And the first one is related to the causal network that has been developed among the different factors that we have considered. So what is very interesting, it's actually for the students, so you have not to forget that we have collected data from the students. So you may have different impressions from teachers, from families, but these are the vision of the student. For the student, the contextual factor, I mean, the social influence and also the political action has no influence at all. And also this independently on the value that they attribute to all to each one of these factors. And also the family environment is not so relevant. All the these are the perception about the technological skill, and they are all only related to the ability to organize. I mean, their own time. Of course, I have to say that probably we missed some connection because we had only 160 students that answered to the survey. To attain a fully developed causal network, maybe you need 500 students, but this was not possible because we would like to compare some courses that have the same characteristics. And again, you will also see that there was no relevant psychological problem, and the only influence of possible psychological problem were related to the increase of the working load. Then you will see that in light blue, you see all the parameters that are related with the technological setting and competence setting of the university. And more or less, they are the beginning of the causal chain. And you see that in some sense influence the outcomes, final outcomes, and all the educational activities. Here in light orange, you see all the parameters that has to do with educational activities. And these are the more relevant for the students. Indeed, again, the student very pragmatic. If this parameter works very well, then they have more or less a positive opinion about the use of online learning. Individual factors are related, again, only exclusively to educational activities factors. So you see that you go from the learning ecosystem factor, you pass through the most relevant one for the students that has to do with educational activity factor that are fitted with the individual factor, and they arrive to the outcomes about let's say the sustainability of the online learning, the usage that should be done of online learning, and also to the immaturity of the environment.
Carlo, sorry, we are running out of time. You have almost used 20 minutes.
Okay, I will go very fast to the last question. I mean, I will just to make note you that the perceived value that are considered very relevant in the TAM model actually are a sort of side effect. They contribute, but they are at the side of the main causal network. And this also say that probably you cannot use the same the factor in the same way with respect to traditional innovation processes. So finally, we come to the MAITI model, and you see, anticipating more or less what I already said before, that technological setting or the organizational factor feed into the educational activity process together with the individual factor. Then, of course, this determine the opinion of the student and for about future intention and expectation, and about the impression that they have about a learning ecosystem. There are no really relevant influence determined by contextual factor or about change that can be derived by these pandemics. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. A virtual clap. We don't have much time left, but if there is a question, I think we can definitely take it. So I will just have a quick question, maybe. Have you checked if there is any difference between student who get into the system versus the ones, I'm thinking, for example, first year student at the university versus the one who already know the system, and it is the same whatever system you are entering.
Monica, this is a very special cohort. It's a cohort of bachelor students that was attending a course in educational science, and basically they can attend either the first, the second, or the third year. So we were not able to make any difference.
To make that,
no.
Any additional question? Otherwise, I think.
Monica, maybe a quick question. We had such a nice insight of Inger, and whenever I see these results, Carlo, I noticed, and I know them, of course, not only of, I know the work that you have been publishing and your research, and I understand, of course, also the limitations of the cohort and so on, but it's similar to what the perception of our students here in Portugal in Aveiro. It's amazing how the contexts are left out. And when we saw such an inspiring keynote like Inger, where things should be going in one direction, and we see here how our students looking at the relevance of technology and how at a certain point it's integrated in distance learning, the educational processes, and it seems like contexts are not relevant. The face-to-face, but more than face-to-face, it's not just a face-to-face issue. It's the context. It's really understanding the experience, human experience of what they would want to study, the impact of what they are studying in the real context of where things are and knowledge should be taking place. And it's amazing how they are not sensitive to that.
Yeah, this has been, I think that we have been detected this in all different grades, also in high school. What's happened is that the students are very, nowadays, maybe once it was not like this, but nowadays they are very pragmatic, as I said. So if something is useful for them, it's okay. So of course they would like, for example, to come back to the university, but only for socializing reason. And maybe some of them to meet the professor because they prefer to have a direct contact with the professor. But as far as the technology, if technology can bring them the advantage, they, for example, prefer to use technologies. Just to make you an example, as I say you at the beginning, we got direction to have face-to-face examination. Okay, most of the students would like to have online examination, and not only to cheating, because they think that is more comfortable for them. So this is just to say that this should give us, this is a message that we should take. I mean, we should not, in principle, come back to the previous status as it was. In some sense, we should try to integrate and give the right relevance to the face-to-face activities and to the online activities. For example, they like very much the possibility to have a recorded lecture, to transcribe what has been said by the professor, share the notes, and so on. So, you know, I think if we will come back exactly as it was before, maybe we will do a mistake, because really they are very pragmatic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlo. Very nice and interesting presentation. Thank you again.